Hi everyone. I wanted to do another Loopy Pro video and talk about an issue with Loopy that is kind of really problematic and then present kind of a workaround for that. And I hope you enjoy the video. Most of it will be the interface on my iPad here, so let's get started. The first thing I want to talk about is what is the issue. And the issue is that the widgets that are the step dial widgets, which are, they're kind of like teardrop shaped circles. And you would turn this dial to a different position or a different item. And you can set however many items you want in the edit mode. And you can turn it to each position, and then an action will happen when you select something. So here's one here in edit mode. This one here is set to change presets in a specific plugin. Okay, so as you can see, when it says select item. When I select each item, it will then change a different preset. And I've gone in and just picked some presets out for this example. Again, preset here is for one specific plugin. I'm changing the preset. Now, the problem with this, what's the issue with this? Well, the issue is that the scroll doesn't have this kind of scroll through ability. And what do I mean by that? To explain that, I'll pick something I would suspect you've used and know, and that is kind of a drop-down box on a form, right? If you were picking out what state you're in or something, and all 50 states drop down, it has the ability to scroll through and find your state, and as you're scrolling through, nothing happens. But let's look what happens as we have this step dial button and we scroll through to get to the preset for this plugin that we want. You'll see, am I in, yeah. You'll see as I scroll through, maybe I want item 4, position 4, but on the way to position 4, to get to 4, I have to pass through 2 and 3, so to speak, right? To count to 4, I have to count 1, 2, 3. So when I'm scrolling and I'm trying to get, even if I try to do it real quick, I pass through items 2 and 3, and the presets change. And I kind of didn't want that to happen. Now, in some cases, I don't know what that effect turns out to be from an audio perspective, right? What do you kind of hear or don't hear if you scroll pretty fast? However, let's just say you're controlling the scrolling, which I do, with a foot controller, with a MIDI controller, and I press the foot switch. Maybe I double tap or press once. And I'm scrolling through each item there to get to the one I want. Even if I press pretty fast, I'm going to get items I don't want. And when we look at the edit mode again, the reason is because the software is designed, these widgets, these step dial widgets are designed that when I select 1 or 2 or 3, whatever item, as I'm selecting that item, something's going to happen. And I don't want something to happen. I don't want something to happen until I get to the end, to the one I selected, right? Could be the next one, and that's not a big issue, but it may not be. It could be the 3rd or 4th or 5th or 6th, however many items you have in your step dial. So I saw a solution for this, kind of a workaround, and if you're like me, that workaround word tells me something isn't working the way it should be. But I have a workaround that I found online on Facebook, and I want to share that with you. It's, as all workarounds, the first word in workaround is work. So there's more things you have to do to make that work, but we'll go through that here. I'll go in edit mode, and let me close that for a second, and I'll show you what the workaround is. First thing is, I create two step dials. I have one that is the display step dial, and then I have what I'll call the shadow step dial. Only the shadow knows. And what I'm going to do is, if my display thing has 4 steps or 3 steps or 5 steps, my shadow dial will have twice as many steps. Okay? So if I have 5 steps on the display dial, I have 10 steps on the shadow. And let me go to the edit mode. And what I do with the display dial is, first of all, I give every step the most meaningful name I can. So I don't forget what it's doing. And if I don't use that widget for a while and then I come back to use it, then I'll really forget. So I have 2 sets of effects. One is that on select, when I select that position on the step dial, I am going to actually select the corresponding position on the shadow dial. So if I select, when I select 1 on the display dial, the action that's going to happen when I select 1 here is say, okay, go pick the first step on the shadow dial. When I do 2, go pick the second step on the shadow dial. And you can see when I've chosen this. My apologies. I had this set up ahead of time, so I did not walk through each step. So on the display dial, when I have all the items put in there that I want, and I have them named very clearly so that I know which preset they're going to select, I'll click on the plus sign next to one of the items in the list, and then I will choose select. So I click on one of the presets in the list, one of the items that I can scroll through, or one of the steps in the dial, and then when I hit the plus sign, there'll be 3 options: select, deselect, and a combination. So I'll press select, and that will bring up the actions. When I select that item, I want this action to happen, and it'll say add action. You can see that dialog here. And of course, the action I'm going to do is I'm going to trigger a widget. Specifically, I'm going to trigger the shadow dial widget, so that I will set it to the exact same item that this is on, that the display dial is on. So if I'm on the second or third, if I'm on the second item on the display dial, I will trigger the widget to say select the second item on the shadow dial. If I am on the 4th item on the display dial, I will trigger the widget on the shadow dial to say select the 4th item on the shadow dial. So whichever item I select on the display dial, as I select that item, it will trigger the shadow dial to select the corresponding item. And we'll go into this more, but the shadow dial for the first X items that correspond to what's on the display dial, they have no action there. So I'm not going to accidentally, or I'm not going to trigger some action scrolling through. Okay? Yeah, the shadow dial here, and I said, here's the action, I want to select position 2. I'm at 2. 2 on the display will move me to 2 on the shadow dial. And then I added another set of effects, okay? What I did was, or actions, and I create these actions on release of the display dial. So what I'm going to do on release of the display dial is I'm going to go to the step dial, that's my target, and I'm going to use the scroll action, okay? I'm not manually scrolling through, I'm using the scroll action in Loopy. So on release here, you can see the target is the step dial, the action is scroll, and I'm going to nudge the dial, the steps in the shadow dial. I'm going to nudge that by four nudges or 4 positions. Now, my display dial has 4 items, 4 presets, and then as you can see, my shadow dial has 8 presets. Now, what I did with the shadow dial is the first 4 presets are named identical to the display dial, and then but no action happens when you select any of the first 4. If I manually selected any of these on the shadow dial, nothing will happen. There's no action set there. Now, step or position or item number 5, 6, 7, 8, that's where things will happen. On those steps, I name them corresponding to what preset I'm going to select. And on select there, when I select, if I were to manually select position 5 on the shadow dial, it says I'm going to pick a preset, and that preset is acoustic keys, and the target is this EQ that I have. Yeah, Pro Q. It's an EQ that Fat Filter makes. Great EQ. And so almost like I had at the first step dial that I showed you, where we kind of scroll through and it changes presets. I'm doing that still, but I'm doing that on the last set of positions or items in the shadow dial, okay? So again, if I had 3 items on the display dial, I'll have 6 on the shadow dial. If I have 5 items on the display dial, I'll have 10, right? And the last set of those will be where I select the preset, okay? And then coming back to the display dial, what I'm doing here is I'm only moving, when I select an item on the display, I'm moving correspondingly on the shadow. But when I release, if I were to press and release that button, that dial button, then I'm scrolling that. First, I'm going to scroll it 4 notches up because I have 4 total presets. So if I was on 1, or I would be scrolling to 5. If I was on 2, I'd be scrolling to 6, right? And when I scroll, it's almost like it just jumps to that item. And it jumps to that item, and I don't execute everything in between or every step along the way, which is the issue with the software, right? So scrolling through to that step that I want will avoid execution along the way, and it will be on that position that I want, and then it will execute. And then I immediately have another action that happens, and that is I scroll back 4. So I went ahead 4 so I can execute some actions on some step, and then I scroll back 4, so now I'm back in line with the display dial. So when I make a move on the display dial, when I make a move on the display dial, the shadow dial will move correspondingly. It will move up 4, and at that point something executes, the actions trigger, if you will, and then it moves back 4, so now it's in line. And you don't kind of see that movement. It will just move and execute, and we'll see that here in a second. So as you can tell, yeah, the keyword in the workaround is work. And I want to say this, there's several features submitted in the Loopy roadmap to create maybe a different type of step dial, or to add some functionality to the existing one that will let you scroll through the steps, you know, and only execute when you release or when you get to a certain point. But it's a little hard to tell. There's a lot of features in the roadmap, and there's, you know, X number of developers, so who knows how long that will take. So let's take a look at this in action, okay? I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna open up 2 windows in addition to this main window. I'm gonna open up that. I want to open up that plugin that I'm going to change the presets for, so that you can see. Can I put that one up here? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a program called MIDI Messenger. It's an app that you can get from the Apple App Store, MIDI Messenger. And you can create messages almost to mimic your foot switches on your MIDI controller. That way I don't necessarily have to, you know, plug everything in. So I am at my desk here, or at one of my desks, and it's messy, yeah, so you can't see all of it. But I'm at my desk, and so to mimic what I would do with a foot switch, I'm using this MIDI Messenger program. I like it a lot. And there's two MIDI messages I'm going to send. I'm going to send a program change message, and if you go into edit mode, if I can push this up a little bit, and then you go into MIDI, and then I hit my display step dial, you can see when I receive on channel 7 a program change message 4, then I'm going to nudge this dial by one step. So when I send a message from my foot switch, I can nudge through the steps, okay? And then when I receive from channel 8 program change message 4, then I will trigger a release, like I pressed and release the dial button itself. And so that will execute those other 2 actions that I have in the dial, right? When I release, on release here, it says, you know, scroll that shadow step dial, scroll the shadow one up 4, and that's where all the actions are at, something will happen, and then scroll it back 4 to keep it in line with the display dial, okay? So let me go to, here we go. So now I have all this out. So first I'm just gonna nudge that dial. And now you can see that display dial is moving. And I haven't hit any release. I haven't sent any of the MIDI messages to release or to press and release that dial. So the EQ itself is not changing. Right now I'm just moving through and stepping through that. So now I'm going to nudge the display dial, and then I'm going to send the other program change to do the release, and you'll see the EQ change. Okay? So now the EQ changed to a different preset. And now nudge it again and press that. Now the EQ changed to a different preset, which is my mandolin preset. And now nudge it one more time to the fourth step or fourth position, and send the change there. And now it's, well, that's not my band pass. Maybe it is. Now they're out of sync. Oh, let me try it again. Okay, so this is the first. That's nudging. That is the electric preset. Something didn't happen. Okay, let me try this again. It's not working. This is a great video. Nudge. Okay, it's not working. Oh, I know why. I didn't release. I have to kind of release. Okay, there we go. So again, this is the second step on both dials, and now you can see it changed. So now I go to the third step, and then that's my mandolin preset. Now I go to the fourth step, and I hit this, and that's my bandpass preset. I go back to the first, and that's my acoustic. The shadow dial will never get, because I move it I nudge it 4 steps, and then I nudge it back 4 steps. And so you'll never see the shadow dial display on, stop on step 5, 6, or 7, or 8. And as you can see from the picture, the step dials don't quite align, because the display one only has 4 positions, or 4 items, or 4 steps. And the shadow one that's actually executing the actions to change the preset for this plugin, that has 8. So the steps are spaced out closer together. And so you can, so this is the workaround that I've come up with. And there it is. I'm just moving through it a little bit. And you can hide the shadow dial on another page, that kind of thing, so that it frees up space on your main page. And now your foot switch and your visualization as you're kind of playing or whatever is just interacting with the display dial, right? And of course, I would give the display dial a meaningful name, like preset for EQ or something that makes sense there. So again, it's not a simple workaround, and I hope that the folks at Loopy can get some of these features that are in the roadmap requested, get them done, and make some of these things better, because it's a pain, to be honest, to have to do that. Of course, there are some things that make some of this a little easier. When you're in edit mode, you can copy and paste. I'll show you that real quick. Let's just say I added another item here, and I'll call this mid EQ or something. I can copy and paste this copy to the clipboard, what was done in the other items or the other positions, and paste it, and then go pick out of my, I don't know, presets the other one I want for that. But nonetheless, there's still a lot of work. Let me delete that so I don't mess something up. There is still a lot of work in that workaround. So I hope this helps. If you're, there are other scenarios for these dials. You can, in this case, I've used the dial to change presets for one specific plugin. You can use the dials to do all kinds of stuff. But again, the problem is that as you scroll through the dial, you can trigger actions. Actions will happen that you don't want to happen. Like I don't want to stop at step 2 or 3. I want to go all the way to 4, and then I want the actions to happen, right? But it doesn't work that way. If you're scrolling through manually, or even if you're nudging one at a time with the MIDI controller. When that item is selected, when that position in the step dial is selected, whatever actions are there will happen. So you need this kind of workaround. Okay, I know I ran my mouth a lot there. I hope this is helpful to you, and I hope you're having fun making some great music. Hey, thank you. Have a good one.